Hello, this is Cheryl Abram. Welcome to Person-Centered Cyber and Murder Mystery Cyber and Security, where I share true stories of people like us who live parts of our lives online. With this series, I hope to demonstrate that cybersecurity is about more than protecting data and systems. To be cyber secure is to be a person who is informed and better able to make cybersecure decisions while living our work and personal lives in the physical and digital world. The story today is about Casey Woody and an internet predator. After telling Casey's story, I'm going to provide a few tips to help us make more cybersecure decisions. Casey was born on October 17, 1989 in Little Rock, Arkansas. When she was 7 years old, her mother was killed in a car accident, leaving Casey, her father, and her two brothers. Casey never talked about her mother's death, but everyone knew it had a really huge impact on her, of course. Casey was a 12-year-old student. She was a member of the band. She was in the choir. She was also in gifted and talented programs. She had really two close friends, Sam and Jessica, and she always had them over to her house, or you will find Casey at one of their homes for sleepovers, parties, and they just hung out all the time. Casey's house was in a really isolated and really heavily wooded area. And because of that, outgoing calls could be really expensive. So her dad, Rick, he allowed Casey to use instant messaging. So primarily, he could quickly get in contact with her, and also so she could keep in contact with her friends. So Casey registered on Yahoo Messenger. Her username was Model Behavior 63. And at first, she only chatted with people that she knew from school, which about 3 or 4 people. But eventually, when the girls celebrated New Year at Casey's house, Casey went into a Christian teen chat room to meet new people. And she and her friends figured that a Christian chat room would be safer than any other kind of chat room, which showed that they were aware that there were bad people online. Okay, so they were cognizant of that. In the Christian chat room, Casey met Dave Fagan, a 17-year-old from California. Dave told her and her friends he liked to surf, and of course, being from Arkansas, these girls, they really hadn't gone anywhere, so they were really excited to talk to somebody from California. And they asked him if he did all kinds of things, like things that Californians do, and he verified yes, I do all those really cool things. Now, Casey and Dave, they started to talk a lot. They were chatting every day. And Casey really, really liked him. She thought he was a wonderful person. He was a good listener. And she convinced her friends to friend Dave on Yahoo. And they did. They friended, and they talked to him too. Since Casey's dad worked long hours, he was a police officer. He wasn't home a lot to monitor what she did online. Now, he was aware that Casey talked to boys online, but he said he really wasn't worried as long as the boys were over there and Casey was in the house. He was fine with it. Now, this did change around the summer of that year because Casey told her dad that Dave was turning 18. Now, when he heard that, he became a little upset because Casey's only 12. And he said, "You're talking to an 18-year-old, so I need you to stop talking to him. He's too old. He shouldn't be talking to you at all." Casey told Dave that her father said she can't talk to him anymore, but Dave continued to call her to talk to her about his sick aunt, who also happened to live in Arkansas. And in fact, he told Casey that his aunt's condition was getting worse, so he was going to have to drive to Arkansas so that he could be with her until she finally passed away. On the morning of December 3rd of that year, 2002, while Casey was at school, Sam, her friend, noticed that Casey had a photo of another boy that she'd been talking to in her locker. Sam asked her, "Well, how'd you get that picture?" And Casey said, "Scott, who was this new boy online," she said, "Scott mailed it to me." So Sam was very upset. She was like, "What are you talking about? You gave him your mailing address, so now he knows where you live." She said, "You don't even know who this person is. He could be a grandfather or something, and he's sending you the picture of his grandson." So they got into a little argument because Sam was very disturbed that everything was fine until Casey started sharing that kind of information. Now, even though they did argue, at the end of the day, Casey seemed to have gotten over it. So she met Sam and Jessica. and wanted to know if she could spend the night at one of their houses. But it was a weekday, and Casey didn't have written permission to ride the bus, so the girls decided, okay, well, we'll just spend the night this coming Saturday. Now later, in an interview, Sam and Jessica admitted that it was kind of odd for Casey to ask for a sleepover on a school night. That evening, Casey was home alone. Her dad was at work and her brothers were out, as they usually were. Casey was instant messaging with Scott, and Dave called, so she was going back and forth talking to Scott and Dave. At around 9:41, Casey's messages with Scott abruptly stopped. Now remember, Scott is the other boyfriend that he lives in Georgia. Her message with him suddenly stopped, so Scott, he got concerned, so he kept sending messages, for Casey, but she never answered. Eventually, he called her house, and no one answered the phone. When her brother and father got home, they knew right away something was terrible, because her father found her raincoat. She had a yellow raincoat, and he said she wouldn't have gone anywhere without that. He also found her glasses, and they were twisted and broken. So he knew that something was terrible. Again, her father's a police officer, so he called for backup. Eventually, and very sadly, the police discovered that Dave Fagan, the 17-year-old surfer from California, was actually David Fuller, a 47-year-old married father of two with a history of predation of underage girls. In this case, a predator used an internet connection to develop a trusting relationship with a 12-year-old, Casey Woody. When he developed that relationship, there was another man living in Casey's house with the same access as her father and brothers. Now, he was online, but she had already told him everything he needed to know about who she was, who they were, how to get in, how everything worked. So he was eventually there in her house, and the father and no one else had no idea. So we have two questions here that come out of this case. Number one, how do we secure our homes to prevent another person from moving in the way Dave Fuller did? He moved in virtually, but he was still in. And number two, how do we discover if there is currently a predator living in our homes, like right now? Now, to the first question, how do we secure our homes to prevent another person from moving in? There's three things: administrative, technical, and operational controls. Administrative rules. Now, her father did tell Casey that Dave was too old and she could no longer speak to him. That's like an administrative rule, just communicating what our expectations are. But that rule was never put into operation. So, for example, an operational control for you cannot talk to Dave, he is too old, would be for the father to actually talk to Dave and say, Dave, you're too old. I do not want you calling here to my daughter anymore. Also, not just Dave, but Dave's parents. If you're really 17, you probably have parents in your home. So let me talk to your parents or your guardians or whomever. And we could have seen what would have resulted from that. I suspect that Dave would no longer have been interested, or he would have at least been deterred, knowing that the father was paying attention. Number two, for operational, there's a block feature on our phones that we could actually use. So they had a phone, they got a phone bill, the dad could see the number and just block it. In addition to that, we have the technical controls. And now there are so many, just a plethora of parental control apps and routers available today. You can monitor activity like internet searches and browsing. There's live tracking. There's the ability, if you see something suspicious, to dig deeper and to start looking at instant messages and social media interactions. You can set a daily internet time limit. There's even one with a panic button to alert parents and other adults if something unexpected happens, like something that the child can press to say, something's happened, I need help. So there's a lot of things out there to get to that first issue. How do we secure our homes to keep these individuals out? Now, to the second one, what if the predator is already in your home? How do you find that out? Now, going directly to the child and asking, have you given them this? You may not get a fully truthful information because it depends. This takes more than technical solutions and rules. So the main issue that I see in Casey's case is the fact that Dave had her trust. Now, with trust, he purchased several important things: her address, he purchased her comfort level, and he purchased her ability to ignore her father's rule. Now, the only thing that trumps trust in this predator that is potentially in your house right now is trust and safety from a parent, guardian, sibling, or some other person that truly loves the child. And this means that the child or adult, even, because adults are preyed on as well, they need to feel safe enough to say, Dad, like in Casey's case, Dad, I've been talking to Dave and he said that he's coming to Arkansas to visit his sick aunt tonight. Okay. No one knew. She hadn't told anyone that. The friends had an idea that he was going to be visiting soon, but as far as the person who could really do something about it, Dad did not know. Now, we don't want to leave it up to machines to tell us what our children are doing, because machines can't tell us everything. We have to have a relationship that allows our kids to feel safe enough to share this kind of information with us. Eventually, authorities arrived at a unit that Dave Fuller had rented on December 4th. The door was down and did not have a lock, and when the police officer lifted it, he noticed a silver minivan and the engine was still running. Then he heard a single shot to it, and they backed off and they called for backup. When backup got there, they stormed the storage unit and they found David Fuller lying dead on the floor behind the minivan, but they also found Casey's body in the back of the minivan. Her wrists and ankles were chained to the four corners of the van's floor. David Fuller had raped her before shooting her in the head. Casey's friends and family founded the Casey Woody Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization specifically designed to teach parents and children about internet safety. Her dad, Rick, said that Casey liked to help people, and he created this organization as a way to do this in honor of her. And he wanted to help prevent other children and families from suffering in this way. Thanks everyone for listening to this episode of Murder, Mystery, Cyber, and Security. I will see you back here next time.